It was the winter of 1944, and Europe was frozen in exhaustion. Towns lay in silence beneath the snow, their ruins softened by ice, their hopes flickering like weak lanterns in a storm. Most believed the war was nearly over. Hitler's armies were retreating, his empire collapsing under its own weight. Yet, deep within the Ardennes forest, something was stirring. A final gamble, desperate and audacious. Thousands of German troops gathered in secret, engines muffled, uniforms disguised by frost and fog. The world would soon call it the Battle of the Bulge, but in those first quiet days, it was only a whisper of movement in the trees. What the Allies didn't know was that an invisible weapon, one of patience, intellect, and silence, was already waiting for them. A weapon that would see the unseen and quietly crush the last illusion of Nazi victory. Hitler's armies had long been bled dry, their fuel scarce, their faith fractured. But desperation has a strange kind of brilliance. In December of 1944, the Führer gambled everything on a single strike through the Ardennes. A surprise assault meant to split the Allied line, seize Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. It was a plan born not of strength, but of denial, a refusal to accept the war's inevitable end. He trusted in the same ghosts that had once brought him victory: speed, surprise, and the deceit of winter itself. The fog became his ally, the snow his camouflage. Tanks moved under the cover of darkness, whispering through forests where radios fell silent and maps turned meaningless. To the Allies, the front seemed still until it exploded. The gamble was brilliant, impossible, and doomed, because what Hitler couldn't see was already watching him, an unseen mind at work, unraveling his secrets before his armies ever reached the light. Long before the snow fell over the Ardennes, another battle had already begun, one without guns, fought in silence and secrecy. Deep in the English countryside, behind the walls of a place called Bletchley Park, a different army worked through the night. Mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, and poets, people who might never have worn a uniform, waged war with pencil, paper, and machines that hummed like restless hearts. Their enemy was Enigma, a cipher so complex it was said to be unbreakable. Every German order, every convoy route, every whisper of Hitler's plans passed through its coils of code. But at Bletchley, the impossible began to crack. Through pattern, intuition, and an almost artistic sense of rhythm, these quiet minds learned to read the enemy's secrets. The weapon they built wasn't made of steel or fire. It was made of insight. Each decoded message became a fragment of foresight, a map of intentions drawn from chaos. The Allied commanders didn't know every name behind those messages, only that somehow, somewhere, someone always seemed one step ahead. In that invisible war of intellect and patience, the real tide had already begun to turn. Long before the first shot echoed through the snow, the power of Ultra did not rest only in machines or mathematics. It lived in the hands of those who listened. Across Britain, in small huts and freezing outposts, thousands of women bent over crackling radios, intercepting fragments of German transmissions as they drifted through the air like ghosts. They copied every code group, every strange rhythm, every pause, never knowing which one might change the course of the war. Others at Bletchley translated and typed through endless nights, piecing together meaning from chaos, line by line, heartbeat by heartbeat. They were told never to speak of what they did. Even among friends they pretended ignorance. Their triumphs were buried in silence, their pride carried only in secret. Yet without them, no code would have been cracked, no deception unveiled. They were the unseen pulse behind the victory, the whisperers in a world of noise, proving that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in being heard, but in listening completely. When Hitler's offensive erupted through the snow, chaos reigned. The fog blinded reconnaissance planes, radio lines fractured, and Allied commanders struggled to see the shape of the enemy. But in hidden rooms far from the front, the shadows were already speaking. Ultra intercepts had begun to outline the invisible map of the German advance, troop movements, fuel shortages, coded requests for reinforcements. Each decrypted message was like light breaking through mist. Through this intelligence, the Allies saw what Hitler could not hide, that his attack burned faster than his fuel, that his gamble was running on desperation. While soldiers fought knee-deep in snow, generals quietly adjusted strategies guided by secrets. The enemy never knew they'd lost. Convoys shifted, reinforcements converged, traps closed. The war began to bend, not through sheer firepower, but through foresight. The true weapon was not the codebreakers' machines, nor the armies they guided, but perception itself, the ability to see beyond appearance, to read intent where others saw confusion. In that moment, the Allies were not just fighting the Germans. They were fighting blindness, and for the first time in years, the world began to see through Hitler's illusion of control. The brilliance of Ultra's triumph was that almost no one knew it existed. Reports arrived at Allied headquarters wrapped in mystery. From a reliable source, they would say, never naming the minds that delivered them. To protect the secret, commanders often claimed credit elsewhere, letting rumors of luck and intuition fill the gaps. The soldiers on the ground fought with courage, unaware that an invisible hand had been guiding them through the fog. Victory depended on silence. At Bletchley Park, there were no celebrations, no medals pinned in crowded halls. Just the quiet turning of another page, the folding of another message marked decrypted. Those who knew what they'd done carried the knowledge like a hidden scar. Proud, but burdened by the promise never to speak of it. Years would pass before the world even learned their names. The war's end came not with fanfare, but with understanding that power could exist without spectacle, and that sometimes the most decisive victories are the ones history barely notices. The weapon that crushed Hitler's final gamble wasn't a bomb or a bullet. It was a secret kept. A silence so complete it became strength. Long after the guns fell silent, the true story of Ultra remained buried beneath decades of secrecy. When it finally surfaced, the revelation reshaped how we understood the war itself. Not as a clash of armies alone, but as a contest of perception. The quiet minds at Bletchley had changed history without ever stepping onto a battlefield. They proved that strength is not only measured in force, but in foresight, in the discipline to wait, to watch, to understand. Their legacy feels hauntingly familiar today. In an age where visibility is constant and noise endless, their silence speaks louder than ever. It reminds us that knowledge without attention is blindness, and that power, misused, can destroy the very truth it seeks to defend. The Codebreakers' victory was never just military, it was moral. They taught the world that the sharpest weapon isn't what pierces armor, but what pierces illusion, and that sometimes the most powerful act of all is simply to see.